So Lexie Hall for the Indiana Fever, in my opinion, is their best defender. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, she isn't the greatest, but she has been working on her 3 point percentage. She started out at 18% to 21%. Now she's up to 28% this year. So if she wants to have a bigger impact on that side of the ball, if she can get to like 35, 38%, which is doable because her percentages have been going up, which means that she's been working on her 3 point shot, she's probably going to end up playing more minutes for the Fever. Now, if you're the best defender on the team, what should Christy Sides do in this situation? Well, she has a lot of length because she's 6'1", and you do need some bench production because obviously you can't always rely on Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, Samuelson, Clark to play all those minutes, especially through a regular season because you want to have them fresh for the playoffs. So what I would do is if I'm Christy Sides is play her in closing lineups when you need her, especially if it works out with the matchups. It is matchup dependent. Another time of when you can play Lexie Hall is when the star player of the other team is cooking, scoring a lot of points, being efficient, and giving the team a lot of momentum. Maybe bring her in for a 3 to 5 minute spurt to slow them down and get Indiana back in the game. Or if you're down 10 plus points, the other opponent's on a 10 plus run or 15, whatever, they're on a huge run. You bring her in to get a couple of stops and you get the Fever back in the game. Lexi Hall has a tendency to draw offensive fouls and move in screens. Therefore, it creates more possessions for the Fever. So, if she can be out there for moments in the game where you need her to just get some stops to either get you back in the game or let's just say it's a low scoring affair. Both teams are shooting bricks, not playing well on the offensive side of the ball. You bring her in just to build momentum because you need that utility player on your team to do all the dirty work, whether it's drawing offensive fouls, moving screens, or if it's diving for loose balls. If Lexi Hall is out there to provide that energy, it's only going to help the Fever gain momentum and help Clark and Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston on the offensive side of the ball. Because if you see Lexi Hall giving this type of effort, well, it's only going to inspire her team. So I think as a defensive specialist, Lexi Hall fits that perfectly for this team. Sure, she's not the greatest on offense, but the reality is you still need a good defender out there. And Lexi Hall provides that for this team. So if you're in situations where you're trying to navigate a game and you're trying to strategize things, then try to implement Hall into this lineup. I think she's great in the closing lines because if you get somebody making stops and you're trying to close out a game, perfect. So Chrissy Sides has to utilize Lexi Hall correctly. Make sure she's out there during important spurts of the game or in moments where you feel like she could give the team a boost of energy, especially if she's drawing offensive fouls. That's huge for the Fever. And again, I still think the Fever need to get better on defense. Their off-ball defense is not that good, especially when teams are cutting. They don't do a good job of sticking to their person. But I think at the end of the day, they're going to be just fine. I mean, when you're 10-6 and starting 1-8, that's a pretty big sample size. If they can beat the Wings tonight, move to 11-6, go into the All-Star break, that's a lot of positive momentum for this team. And you can see them getting better as a unit. But I think Lexi Hall could be an X factor for them, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, you would like to see her do more on offense, but play to the team's strengths. Right now, she is elite on defense, and she can hold her own. She's not the fastest person, but she has the length to lock you down and make it tough for the opponent. And sometimes that's what you need, especially during games where things are tough for your offense and you need some stops. Every game is matchup dependent, so I wouldn't just play her randomly. I would look at the matchups and go, okay, where can Lexi Hall make an impact? And when should I play her? So Chrissy Side's got to be smart with this decision because we know on offense, if she's out there, teams are going to blitz Clark and Mitchell. So if she's in a situation where she's not given a great defensive effort, or let's just say she doesn't have it that night, play her less minutes because you don't want a situation where she's not hitting her threes and then the other team is just cooking her on the offense, which means her value isn't as impactful that night. So you just got to figure out, where your team is at. You got to figure out your rotations because there's going to be times where that will happen. Now, again, if she can work on her 3 point shot, continue to get better because if you go from 18% to 28% in the past 3 seasons, that's improvement. So if you can get that up to 38%, now you're a threat on offense and you can't just leave her on an island. Right now, defenses are going to do that. They're going to leave her by herself and dare her to shoot the ball. And then they're going to make Clark and Mitchell pass the ball. So they'll probably send doubles and blitz them and force other women to beat them out there. Of course, there's been a lot of criticism of Christy's size. on that bandwagon too. I think she needs to go. But for now, this is what they have. And I think Lexie Hall is an important part of this rotation going forward. It's important for the Indiana Fever to figure out their foundational pieces right now. You have Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston as your duo. You have a 3-point specialist in Katie Lou Samuelson. And then you have Lexie Hall, who's a really good defender. And do you want to keep Kelsey Mitchell around? Because yes, she can generate offense, but maybe you need to move on and find somebody with more athleticism. But I think the Fever need more athletic wings on this team because they do lack athleticism. So it's important for the Fever to look at this roster now because it's a young roster. You evaluate the season. They could make the playoffs, so they got to make sure, obviously, they continue to build momentum. If they win tonight, they move to 11-6 and start in 1-8. And if they get to 500 basketball after the All-Star break, then you need to consider, okay, how can we get this team to be a contender? How can we get to that next step? Obviously, it's not going to happen overnight, but you want to look at which players you're keeping. I think Lexie Hall needs to stay. And if she's going to keep working on her 3-point shot, so let's say she improves it by 5-6% by next year. Now you're at 33-34% from shooting three. Now you're seeing, okay, she's a great defender. She's working on a 3-point shot. Now she's not much of a liability on offense. I know 33-34% isn't the greatest, but she's making strides. And obviously, Caitlin Clark will find her with her playmaking. And then you got to figure out, okay, do we need to keep Kelsey Mitchell around? Because, again, she's great, but you want more athleticism on this team. And when it comes to improving your roster, you're either going to do through free agency, the draft, or making a trade. So the Fever just got to figure out their direction here and what they want to do with this roster. I like what I'm seeing from Lexie Hall, especially if you're able to draw charges out there, force teams to make decisions, and you're giving some defensive effort. That is going to keep you in the league and on a team that really needs a defensive specialist. And it's important for Chrissy Size to figure out how to utilize her throughout the game. Hope you guys enjoyed this video today. I'd love to hear thoughts on how you think Lexie Hall is playing for the Fever. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.